Hi everyone, my name's Neil. Welcome to another FPL video. On this video I'm going to be talking about wildcards and more specifically reasons to use it this game week, and also probably more importantly, as you'll see from this video, reasons not to use it this week. Now for those of you who are absolutely set on wildcarding this week, even after seeing this video, we're also going to be looking at targets for our wildcard teams. So let's get into it. So what I'll say about wildcards is, so the two wildcards and the free hit, they are the most powerful chips we have in our armoury. They represent one of the best ways to gain an edge on other managers, because at the end of the day this game is all about exploiting opportunities that other managers are either not aware of or are just simply unable to do because perhaps they haven't got any chips left. So I mean there's various ways of finding that edge. So obviously one of the things is, you know, looking at statistics, form, fixtures, so having a good grasp on that and spending quite a lot of time on that, whereas perhaps some managers either don't bother doing that very much, or they don't kind of draw the best conclusions perhaps from those stats that maybe you do. So that's one of the ways you can look at gaining that edge. Now one of the other main ways is through the chips, because the thing is, this may sound like a really obvious thing to say, but this game is all about how you compare to other managers, how you perform compared to everyone else. You know, I see people posting things on Twitter like, oh, you know, I've got 60 points this week, it's really good, and I'm thinking, well actually the average was 65, so it's not actually a good week. 60 points is a good week if the average score for that game week in the whole game was 35-40, but it's not if the average was 60-65. Yeah, so it is all about what, you know, how do you compare with everyone else, where are you going to find an edge? You need to find those edges from somewhere. Now with the wildcards, I just think, you know, we don't know what's going to happen in weeks to come. You know, another 2 months down the line there could be COVID issues, people not being able to play because they've got COVID, so, you know, fixture postponements, double weeks, blank game weeks. You just don't know. There's likely to be a great opportunity that will come up to really exploit by using that wildcard, when perhaps most of the managers have already used theirs. I mean, I can almost guarantee that there will be a point later on in the season when something will happen. There'll be some certain circumstances will be there to make you think, you know what, I really wish I had a wild card now, could really do with it. It happens every season. I really think you need to keep that wild card for as long as possible, and just use it only when it's absolutely necessary. And the other thing is, at this stage, we've had 3 game weeks. That's a very little data to go on. That's a really small sample size. Whereas by game week 10, for example, that's a lot larger sample of data from which to draw, you know, meaningful conclusions on who are the best players. You know, who's consistently churning out these great XG stats and who's consistently getting points. We don't really know that now because we've only had 3 weeks. It might be that the players that have been impressive so far, they might fizzle out. So the more information you've got, the better it is to kind of, if you're wildcarding, it's much better to have more information than we have now. Now, the funny thing is, though, despite what I've just said, I've been playing the game for about 15, this is my 16th season, and every season I use my wildcard early. I don't know what it is, there's something, I almost feel like it's kind of burning a hole in my pocket. And every week I'm thinking about it. Shall I use that wild card this week? I might use it. It's almost like I'm kind of looking for excuses to use it. So this season I'm actually determined to take my own advice and just leave it. Just do not use it. And at the moment, with my team at the moment, I don't have any pressing issues. So it's not on my mind, and I'm going to try and be consistent with that. So what you got in front of you there is some criteria, I think, which is quite important when assessing whether or not you really need to use that wildcard, the wildcard necessity. So in my mind, I kind of think if I've got my kind of criteria is I will need to have 4 to 5 players in my team, 4 to 5 fires that urgently need putting out, and where I just don't feel like I can wait. So there's a number of things that can cause fires in your team, and I've just got them listed there. So injured players. Do you have any injured players in your team that are out kind of semi-long term, either certainly 3 to 4 to 5 or more weeks? We're expected them to be out. That's a fire right there. They need to go. Are there any non-starters? Players that you've had from game week 1 who, for whatever reason, just aren't starting. They're out of favour, and that they've just become a problem for you in terms of being able to rely on them to start matches. Are there any players in your team that's about to go on a tough set of fixtures? And there are some fixture swings that are going to be coming up for quite a number of teams. Do you have any injury-prone players in your team? Now, I've seen quite a lot of teams with the likes of Wilson, Antonio, who's the other one? Ings. These guys are all really good, but they're very injury-prone. Now, my kind of rule of thumb is I don't want to have any more than one injury-prone player in my team. Right now, that player is Antonio. Because I've seen some teams with Antonio and Ings, and the thing is, both of those guys can get injured at any time. If they get injured at the same time, that's a real headache. So perhaps that's something to think about. So the other one is underperforming players. It might be that even this early, after only 3 weeks, there might be some players in your team that you've just simply seen enough of, and certainly in my case, that's one of those players is Harvey Barnes. I sold him last week. Normally, I like to be a lot more patient than that, but I kind of felt that with him, even from the start, I wasn't super confident about him in my team. But after the first 2 games, he's not even remotely looking like scoring or assisting. His underlying stats were terrible, and he was also getting subbed off early. So I made the decision. I've seen enough of him. I want to sell him. So going through your team, have a close look at it. You might have you might have an injured player. You might have someone that maybe only started 1 of the 3 games. So, you may have a couple of players who are about to go on a tough run of fixtures, and you might have a player that is really underperforming, and you're just really not happy with. So there you've got 4 to 5 big problems in your team, and I would say absolutely, if you've got that, then I wouldn't disagree with wildcarding now. But if you haven't, if you've only got a couple of issues, and perhaps if you can swap a couple of players round and only take a -4 or even a -8, I would definitely do that as opposed to using the wild card. because it's such a powerful chip. Just keep it. Don't use it if it's not necessary. So that's kind of my thinking around the wildcard justification. The thing is, I get it. It's really tempting to use. And especially what's happened basically over the last sort of week. I mean, literally in the space of a few days, we've got Kane and Ronaldo have both been added into the mix, and all of that has happened literally in the space of a few days, with Kane obviously announcing that he's staying at Spurs 100%, and then the big Ronaldo signing. So I know that there's a lot of teams already wildcarding to accommodate certainly Ronaldo. So I get it, it's tempting to use, but my advice is just try not to use it, only if it's absolutely essential. So right, let's get on to some of the players then. So if you're absolutely adamant that you need to wildcard this week, or you just want to do it, which is fair enough. Everyone has their own reasons. What I've talked about so far is just my own take on it, really. But let's get into the players potentially to look at then. So first up is Diogo Jota. Now, this is a player who was in my Game Week 1 team until the last couple of days before the deadline. I took him out just purely because of the Firmino factor. The news was that Firmino had played a couple of games pre-season and he was scoring goals as well. So I just thought, I don't really want to have him in my team when you've got Firmino in the mix as well. Just that uncertainty of him starting. But at the moment, so Firmino is injured. Now, I'm still trying to find out what the extent is, because I've heard various things about how long he's going to be out for. I've heard some reports have said it's going to be quite a while, and there's been other reports to say, well, it might only be a few games. And I know that he went for a second scan. So it's going to be interesting to see, and I think we need to get some more news about that. But even if Firmino is back, and even if he doesn't miss any games, Jota, I'd say, is still a good option. But he is an even better option, particularly if Firmino's going to miss maybe 2 or 3 games with Liverpool's fixtures. I still think Jota is would be an interesting choice. Certainly a good option, I think. So just quickly looking at his statistics, he's 7.6. His total ownership in the game at the moment is 15.9%, and his stats are pretty impressive. His XG, this is out of all the midfielders, XG 0.98, which is 14th. Not so great on the assist statistics. So shots inside the box, 7, which is 3rd. Shots on target, 4, and that's 2nd. Penalty area touches, 16, which is 8th. Fixtures are kind of okay. So what I've done there is, that's the Fantasy Football Scout fixture ticker for anyone who uses that site. That basically sorts the teams out in terms of fixture difficulty. So I've done this over the next 6 games. So over the next 6 games, Liverpool are basically their 13th. So in the list of all the teams there. So their fixtures are basically 13th best, is basically what that means out of everyone. So not amazing fixtures, but certainly if you're looking at just the next 3, great fixtures: Leeds away, Crystal Palace at home, and Brentford away. So a great option, and an even better one, I would say, if Firmino is definitely going to miss 2 or 3 games, but we need to wait for news on that. Next player is Ferran Torres. Now this guy has gone from, so in my mind, not even an option. However, again, like as I've mentioned earlier, in literally the space of a few days, Kane goes to, or stays at Spurs, confirms that. Ronaldo goes to United, leaving City again, well, still with no striker to play in that sort of main striker role. And then Torres goes and gets 2 goals and an assist. So he's kind of jumped right back up there on the kind of transfer target list. His stats are really good as well, I would say. XG 1.62, which is second out of the midfielders. Again, like Jota, not so much of an assist threat. Shots inside the box 6, which is 7th out of the midfielders. Shots on target 3, which is 13th. Penalty area touches 18, which is 6th. And as you can see there, Man City's fixtures are ranked 12th in terms of difficulty over the next 6. So obviously, right in the middle of those 6 are a couple of really tough fixtures that you kind of really need to bear in mind. And the other thing, I guess, with him is, now we've had the international break, the likes of Kevin De Bruyne and Foden are now obviously 2 weeks closer to coming back into the mix. And I guess with Torres, if you own him, you're perhaps not for the next 1 or 2, because I still don't think either of Foden or De Bruyne will be back yet. Still going to be at least a couple of weeks away. But the only thing is, sort of going forward long term, do you want that? If you've got Torres in the team, do you want to have that kind of anxiety every time the team fixture list is about to be announced? I guess if you can cover it with a decent first sub option, that gives you a little bit of support if he, for the times when perhaps he doesn't get picked and he gets benched, but providing he doesn't come on off the bench. But of course, even if he comes on, and even if he doesn't start, every chance he can still come on and get an assist or get a goal. So he for me is definitely somebody I would be strongly considering if I was wildcarding. In fact, even in terms of just normal transfers, I've got 2 frees this week, and I'm looking at him and Torres. Him and Jota potentially. So yeah, definitely a good option if he's going to carry on playing for Man City as that central striker for only 7.1 million. Could be a fantastic option. His ownership is only 9.5% as well, which is pretty low. So next up is Calvert-Lewin. I have mentioned him before in a previous video. Got to mention him again because he scored again at the last game. Stats are fantastic, and again, still so are Everton's fixtures. Ranking high for XG, he's 3rd out of the strikers for that. Shots inside the box 11, which is 2nd. Shots on target 7, which is 1st. And Everton's fixtures are ranked 5th in the fixture ticker. He's still only 15.2% owned as well, which is not massively high. He has to be an option still, but of course at the moment it's a bit of a headache with the amount of strikers we've got with Ronaldo, Lukaku, Antonio. We can't have everyone. But yeah, the only thing I would say possibly though with Calvert-Lewin is 2 of his goals have been penalties. Are Everton going to get penalties every game? Of course they're not. And he's a little bit of an injury doubt as well. So I would wait for some news on that. Mason Mount, I think could be an interesting one this season. For me, this guy he's always been a little bit of a boring pick in my mind, and I've never owned him. He's the sort of player that kind of he'll tick over with points. He'll get an assist for you 1 week, but then he might blank for the next couple of weeks. Then he'll get an assist again. He just never really gets big scores, or he hasn't in the past. And I think that's why I've been a little bit put off him. But I really think that this season, with Lukaku being there, I actually think he could start to get some hauls this season. I definitely think he can start adding some more goals. because Chelsea, for me, have been quite impressive, and just the way they play with Lukaku up there, he is key really, and I just think because of him being there, I am quite interested in Mount, but again the problem is so many options. But so if you look at his statistics now, in terms of his actual XG, in terms of goals and kind of shots and stuff like that, not great, as you can see from those stats. But he's all about assists. He's first for expected assists from the first 3 games, that is. But I just have a feeling he, as I said, I think he could start to add some goals to his kind of repertoire, if you like. So yeah, he's someone that I think is a good option. Good fixtures in terms of looking at the next 6 overall, they are good. Chelsea is 6th overall. Obviously you've got those tough ones, game week 5 and 6, although I've got to be honest, I don't think the Spurs away game, I wouldn't deem that to be a massively difficult fixture. So really you've only got the Man City game in game week 6, which I would consider to be a really hard fixture. But look at the rest of them from game week 7, it's just full of green. So yeah, definitely a good option for me. Next up is Bamford. He's gone under the radar a little bit so far because he's obviously not done an awful lot, but Leeds have had some tough fixtures, and in the meantime we've had people like Antonio, Calvert-Lewin, Ings, Wilson, they've all been scoring points, so perhaps people haven't been looking at Bamford because of that. But you remember what he did last season? I think he was 2nd or 3rd top striker. And after the Liverpool game, just look at that run of fixtures. Leeds are 3rd on the fixture ticker, and actually his stats are despite his relatively few actual FPL points so far, his stats are really good. He's 5th for XG, 5th for shots inside the box, and 3rd for penalty area touches. And yeah, as I say, with Leeds' fixtures after the Liverpool game, definitely a great option. But there are so many good options, and we can't have them all. I've got Lukaku in again. I know I did mention him last time, but I think he has to be there as being on your kind of radar for wildcarding. I think for a lot of people it's coming down to a decision between either him or Ronaldo. But his stats, so bearing in mind, he's only played 2 games compared to 3 that all the other strikers have played, and also one of those games Chelsea were down to 10 men for half the match against Liverpool, which meant they couldn't do a lot of attacking. But despite all that, his stats are still up there. 4th for XG, 4th for shots inside the box, 6th for shots on target, and 8th for penalty area touches. And again, as I've mentioned previously, Chelsea's fixtures, certainly for the next 6, are good. 6th in the fixture ticker. I think he is a fantastic option now. There's been some mention of a possible injury, and I think he's suspended anyway for the final international game of the international break. But from what I've seen, I think it's a very minor precautionary thing. I expect him to play against Aston Villa, and I also expect him to score well. I've just got a feeling he's going to go quite big against Villa. I'm fairly certain that I'm going to bring him in with one of my 2 free transfers, and he's going to be my captain as well. So yeah, I think he's a great option. Right, we can't do a wildcard kind of transfer target video without talking about this man. What are we going to do with him? So what I've done in terms of, because he's not got any stats from the Premier League, what I've got there is these are his statistics for Juventus last season. So and it's based on an average. So his average XG per game last season was 0.91. That's extremely high. Average expected assists, not great. Average shots per game is 5.39 fantastic. It's a lot. That's a lot of shots. Average shots on target per game was 2.22. These are fantastic stats, by the way, and also we know what Ronaldo is capable of. He's just been an absolute goal machine. Hard to present any arguments against having him, but believe it or not, there are some. So first one is he's 36. He's quite old now. How quickly is he going to settle in to the Man United team? Where is he going to play? And how are Man United going to get the best out of him? So I don't know how. I don't know whether you guys watch FPL Black Box with Mark Southerns and Az. Great podcast. But Mark on the last one raised some. He did some fantastic statistical analysis on Ronaldo and Juventus last season, and what he discovered was that Juventus were top of the league for getting crosses into the box, and the belief is that they did that to get the best out of Ronaldo, because he's not that player that he was 4 or 5 years ago in terms of he's not going to be running down the wing doing a load of step overs and sticking it in the top corner. Well, he might still do that, but the feeling is that he's more of a kind of player that will play centrally, and Juventus had to play like that, just get the crosses into the box to get the best out of him. Now, Man United last season was 17th in the league for getting crosses into the box. So who's going to get the crosses into the box for him? United are going to have to play differently. How quickly are they going to be able to do that? Because with the wingers they play with now, the likes of sort of Greenwood, Rashford when he's back, these guys they're not your traditional wingers. They're kind of your modern day players that play out wide, but they want to get in the middle and get involved in play in the penalty box and get shots in. They're not going to be getting crosses in. So I would envisage that Sancho is going to be quite important to them and to United. He's the one player that kind of springs to mind who will get plenty of crosses in, but at the moment he's not really up to speed. I don't think he's been quite unimpressive, and I would say Greenwood is probably a level above him at the moment. So but they paid so much money for him that at some point you would think that he will be a regular. The other thing that Mark uncovered was that last season the majority of Ronaldo's goals were against the weaker teams in the league. He didn't score many against the league's tougher teams. And if you look at Man United's fixtures over the next 6, obviously the Newcastle game is fantastic, but then after that they get quite a lot tougher. And also, whilst the Newcastle game is great, it's the first game. We don't really know if he's definitely going to start. I still think he probably will. And if he does, is he going to hit the ground running with the way United are set up? Are they all of a sudden going to start getting loads of crosses into the box? Where's he going to play? We assume he's going to play centrally. There's quite a few unknowns. But at the end of the day, yes, it's Ronaldo, and the guy has just been an absolute goal machine. So by all means, it's hard to argue against bringing him in, but perhaps there are some reasons not to, as I've just mentioned. But yeah, it's Ronaldo. I'm looking forward to finding out whether I don't think I'll have him. I need to kind of. I'm just going to sort of take a sit back and watch developments with him, and just see what happens. So I'm going to talk about just the last couple of players now. I'm just going to mention a couple of defenders. So Andreas Christensen. We know how Chelsea can defend. They're just under Tuchel, they're just a clean sheet machine. That they're so good defensively, and this guy hasn't been mentioned very often at all. And I think for 5 million, he could be a great option because he seems to be one of Tuchel's favourites. Looking at last year and this season, he's played pretty much the same amount of games that Rudiger's played. He's not 100% nailed. He will miss some games, but I think he'll play most of the games. So Chelsea's defensive stats I've got there. The expected goals conceded so far has been 3.43, which is 8th. Total shots conceded 34, which is 7th. And total shots on target conceded 11, which is 7th. So not amazing stats for them. They're normally right up there, first, second and third. But again, as I mentioned earlier, against Liverpool, that sending off kind of changed the game, and they had to defend for most of that second half, so naturally would have conceded more shots, etc. I think he's a great option. Again, we've already mentioned Chelsea's fixtures. Not game week 5 and game week 6, obviously not great, but overall, if you're wildcarding, bearing in mind you won't be able to wildcard again and you're looking for long-term players, I think he could be a really good option. Only thing I would suggest though with him is to try and have a decent first sub to come in for him on the occasions when he does drop to the bench, because he won't play every game, but I think he'll play about 80% of the games. Final one is Romain Saiss. So Wolves have been fantastic defensively so far, even though they've conceded. So if you look at their statistics, expected goals conceded 2.51, which is 4th, second best for total shots conceded, and I've also put on, so Saiss has an XG of 0.9, and that's first out of all the defenders. And Wolves are top of the fixture ticker. Just look at that run of fixtures they've got now. Green fixtures, great run of fixtures there. There are cheaper Wolves defenders at 4.5, but I think if you've got the spare 0.5, I would look to get him because he is a goal threat. He should have scored already against United. As you can see from his XG stats, he does like to make a nuisance of himself in the opponent's box, and he scored a few last season. He's just one of these players that just seems to kind of be in the right place at the right time and kind of get on the end of things. But yeah, if you don't want to spend out that extra 0.5, there are, there's great options at 4.5 for Wolves, Cody, etc. But yeah, I think he's a good option though. I'm going to consider him. Wolves have got great fixtures and they've been good defensively. So yeah, that's the end of the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked it, give it a like. Don't forget to subscribe as well. I need to get these subscribers to try and build my channel. If you do subscribe, don't forget to just click that notification bell, because that'll mean you get notified as soon as I upload. So that's it. Thanks for joining in. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you on the next video. Cheers.